We'll take a look at the first prologue now. As I told you, the first prologue was presented only on the first night on which the rivals was staged. Immediately after that, the prologue was withdrawn and another prologue was introduced. This prologue is a very tactful attempt made by the playwright Sheridan to present his case before the audience. As a newcomer in the profession of writing, he wants to get the approval of the audience, and he is introducing that point through this very subtle and interesting prologue. This prologue is put in the form of a conversation between a sergeant at law and an attorney in a courtroom. A sergeant at law in the 18th century was an advocate of the highest order. The judges were appointed from among the sergeants at law. They were the most dignified among advocates, and an attorney was an apprentice in advocacy. And in the course of time, an attorney would become a full-fledged barrister or an advocate. So this is a conversation happening between a sergeant at law and an attorney. Sergeant, what is here? A wild cramp hand. I cannot see without my spectacles. The sergeant is making all kinds of complaints. The first complaint, he is not able to read the handwriting in the piece of paper handed over to him. It's very messy and he can't see without his spectacles. The attorney, this is actually an aside, he means his fee. Okay, he's complaining because he hasn't got his fee. Nay, Mr. Sergeant, good sir, try again, gives money. The attorney bribes the sergeant and then requests him again to go through the paper. The sergeant, the scrawl improves. Okay, now it seems like the handwriting has slightly improved. The scrawl improves. More money is given. Oh, come, it's pretty plain. Now the sergeant is able to read the content really well. Hey, how's this? Dibble, sure it cannot be. A poet's brief, a poet and a fee? Now he understands what is in the paper given to him. It is a poet's case. He is supposed to plead for a poet or a writer, and a fee is also given. Attorney, yes, sir. Though you without reward, I know, would gladly plead the muse's cause. The attorney is trying to flatter the sergeant since he is the apprentice. He says, sir, you are so good. I know that as far as a poet's case is concerned, you would you would appear in court even without the fee. I know you are so good. You like writers and poets so much. You would plead a muse's cause. That means a poet's cause, even without a fee. Then the sergeant is flattered. So, attorney. And if the fee offends, your wrath should fall on me. But if you are not paid enough, if the fee is insufficient, you would get angry with me. And that is why I handed over the fee. Sergeant, dear Dibble, no offense at all. Attorney, some sons of Phoebus in the courts we meet. Sons of Phoebus here stands for poets. So the attorney tells the sergeant, even among legal professionals, we can see some poets, some sons of Phoebus in the courts we meet. So here we get to know that it is about a person who is turning to writing from a legal profession. That means that's a reference to Sheridan. Sergeant, and 50 sons of Phoebus in the Fleet. Fleet is a reference to a debtor's prison called the Fleet prison. And here we can understand that the sergeant disapproves of writers and poets because most of them do not have a good income to support themselves. So when the attorney says some poets can be seen among legal professionals, sergeant makes a repartee. He argues that most of the poets are in debtor's prison. 50 sons of Phoebus in the Fleet prison or the debtor's prison. Attorney, now pleads he verse, who with a decent sprig of bass adorns his legal waist of wig. So the attorney is trying to convince the sergeant that it is okay to take up the profession of writing even for a person who has been in the legal profession. So here the decent sprig of bass stands for the writing profession and the wig stands for the legal profession or the profession of a lawyer. So here the attorney is trying to argue that it is okay for a person from the legal profession, a lawyer, to take up writing. No pleads he was who with a decent sprig of bass adorns his legal waist of wig. If someone tries to take up writing uh, along with the legal profession, it is not a very bad choice according to the attorney. Sergeant. Full bottomed heroes, thus on signs, unfurl a leaf of laurel in a grove of curl. Now the sergeant is slowly accepting the attorney's argument. Yeah, you're right. Full bottomed heroes, here stands for judges, king's councils, etc. You're right. Some of the judges, those who are in the legal profession, full bottomed heroes, thus, on signs, unfurl a leaf of laurel in a grove of curl. They occasionally take to writing. Great people like the judges, the king's councils, etc., occasionally turn to writing. They unfurl a leaf of laurel, that stands for writing, in a grove of curl, even amidst their legal profession. The curl here stands for the wig that is associated with the legal profession. You must remember that in the 18th century, it was mandatory for legal professionals to wear a wig. So occasionally, great judges, king's councils, etc., do take to writing even amidst their legal profession. Yet tell your client that in adverse days, this wig is warmer than a bush of bass. So what is he saying? You must tell your client, that is the poet who is handed over this case to be pleaded, tell him that in adverse days, this wig is warmer than a bush of bass. The legal profession will be much better than the writing profession, because if he is in the adverse days, it is safer to be in the legal profession than in a writing profession. That is the wig, the legal profession, bush of bass, writing. Attorney. Do you then, sir, my client's place supply, profuse of robe and prodigal of tie? So now again, the attorney is flattering the sergeant. He calls him profuse of robe and prodigal of tie. So he asks him, sir, so are you going to take up my client's case? Have you accepted this case? And will you plead this? He calls him profuse of robe and prodigal of tie to show his status as a sergeant at law. You are a person with great status. So, sir, do you take up my client's case? Do you, with all those blushing powers of face and wonted bashful hesitating grace, rise in the court and flourish on the case? Again, he is adding more words to please the sergeant. You are a very reserved person. You are a person with all the qualities of an advocate. You are not the show person with an intention of attracting attention towards yourself. You are a reserved character. You are slightly shy, but when you represent a case, you have got great talent. So do you, with all those blushing powers of the face and wonted bashful hesitating grace. Wonted bashful hesitating grace means slightly reserved, shy kind of character. Rise in court and flourish on the case. So will you please represent the case? So the sergeant has accepted the case. He is about to present it. And the judges here, you must remember, are none other than the audience. So the sergeant is pleading the case for the playwright in front of the audience. That means Sheridan is requesting the audience to accept his humble attempt at playwriting. For practice then, suppose this brief will show it. He is going to argue. Me, Sergeant Woodward, counsel for the poet. I am the advocate for the poet, counsel for the poet. Used to the ground. I am used to this, argument in courts. I know it's hard to deal with this dread court from whence there is no appeal. He is already taking a caveat. A caveat would mean a mungur jamyam. Okay. I know it is hard to deal with this dread court. He is describing the audience in front of him as a dread court. From whence there is no appeal. If you reject a case, there is no appeal. Whence means where. From whence there is no appeal. No tricking here to blunt the edge of law. The audience cannot be tricked in any way. No kind of tricking can happen here. The log points cannot be blunted or manipulated in order to get a positive verdict. The audience, they look very objectively at what is presented before them and they give the verdict. So I know it is hard to deal with this dread quote, from whence there is no appeal, no tricking here, to blunt the edge of law, to reduce the sharpness of the edge of law. The audience is very objective. They cannot be satisfied with anything less than a good play. Or damned in equity, escape by flaw. No person with a flaw can escape here. But judgment given, your sentence must remain. No writ of errors lies in Drury Lane. So, the judgment of the audience at Drury Lane is final. Drury Lane is a reference to the Drury Lane Theatre. It is a theatre which is still in use in London. It's a London-based theatre. So, The Rivals was presented for the first time in Drury Lane Theatre. But judgment given, your sentence must remain. Whatever sentence the audience gives, that will remain. Their verdict will be supreme. There will not be any appeal about that. No writ of error lies to Drury Lane. Yet, when so kind you seem, it is past dispute. Now, the sergeant is trying to please the audience a little bit. You look so kind. When so kind you seem, it is past dispute. We gain some favor, if not cause of suit. So he is saying that, okay, I know that the Drury Lane audience will not give a false verdict. Their verdict is final. There is no appeal once the verdict is given. But today I can see that most of you look very kind. So kind you seem, it is past dispute, we gain some favor. I am sure that our case will gain some favor from you, if not cause of suit. Even if you do not give a totally favorable verdict, at least I am sure you will give some favor to this case. No spleen is here. There is no hatred. There is no ill feeling here. I see no hoarded fury. There is no anger among any of you towards my poor client. I think I never faced a milder jury. You are so milder jury. He is trying to please the audience again. You are such a mild jury. Please accept what we are going to present here. Sad elves are plight. If you don't accept our case, that is the play, sad will be our plight. Where frowns are transportation, a hiss the gallows, and a groan damnation. So if the audience frowns, hisses or groans, all those reactions, negative reactions, will act as a punishment to the poet or the writer who is going to present the play there. So frowns are as bad as transportation. Hiss would mean the gallows, and the groan, damnation. All these are different forms of punishment. But such the public candor, without fear, my client waives all right of challenge here. But since most of the audience looks, so favorable, my client, he feels confident. He feels that he'll be able to please the audience. No newsman from our session is dismissed, nor wit nor critic we scratch off the list. So we are not exempting any of you from our list of judges. All of you have to give your opinion. No newsman from our session is dismissed. The newsmen, maybe the reporters of the various dailies, they should give a positive verdict. Nor wit nor critic we scratch off the list. Critics, wits, ordinary people, everybody is in the list of our judges. So this play is meant for all of you, and all of you should watch the play and give your verdict. His faults can never, sorry, his, his faults can never hurt another's case. His crime at worst, a bad attempt to please. So the sergeant is telling the audience, the judges hear that his faults can never hurt another's case. My client, he has not committed any fault that would be harmful to another person. His crime at worst, if at all the play is not good, his worst crime would be a bad attempt to please. So the worst thing he has done is just a bad attempt to please. He is trying to please you, but if you are not pleased, his crime would be a bad attempt to please. Thus, all respecting, he appeals to all, and by the general voice, withstand or will stand or fall. So, with all respect, due respect, he appeals to all. My client, poor Sheridan, he is appealing to all, and by the general voice, will stand or fall. If you support him, he will stand. But if you give a negative opinion of his play, he will fall. By general voice, will stand or fall. So this is the first prologue. It is a very subtly, cleverly made prologue, putting the case of the playwright before the audience, requesting the audience, each one of the audience, to view it carefully and give their verdict. And the sergeant is already telling the audience that the audience looks very favorable, supportive, and gentle. So he expresses hope that the play will be well received. Hello everyone. Let's start off today's discussion with the second prologue to the play The Rivals. We have already discussed the first prologue, and as I told you, the first prologue was presented only once, that is on the first night of the presentation of The Rivals. When The Rivals was withdrawn for revision, the first prologue was totally dropped. And in the first prologue, we saw that two characters, attorney and a sergeant at law, appear on stage. The setting is a courtroom. The attorney bribes the sergeant at law to plead a case. That is the case of the new author, Sheridan. And the sergeant at law is supposed to present the argument in favor of Sheridan before the judges, that is the audience at Drury Lane Theatre. And towards the end of the prologue, we see that the sergeant very artfully presents an argument for the new author, Sheridan. In the second prologue, there is only one character. She is a female counsel or a lady advocate. She is also here to plead for someone, but this time it is not for Sheridan. She pleads for the comic muse. The genre of witty comedy is personified here as a lady, a comic muse, and the female counsel pleads the case of the comic muse. We'll read the prologue. Granted our cause, our suit and trial over, the worthy sergeant need appear no more. So our case has already been presented in front of the judges once. The trial is over, so the sergeant need not appear anymore. In pleasing, I a different client choose. He served the poet, I would serve the muse. I am here to please another client, to argue for another client. The sergeant argued for the poet, Sheridan. I would serve the muse. I am here to make an argument in support of the comic muse, that is the genre of witty comedy of manners. Like him, I'll try to merit your applause, a female counsel in a female's cause. Just as the sergeant tried to win your approval for Sheridan, I will also try to win your applause or your approval for the comic muse. My client is the comic muse. So I am a female counsel in a female's cause. I am a lady advocate representing another lady, that is the comic muse. Look at this form. She points to the representation of the comic muse on one side of the stage. She is presented as a lady. Look on this form, where humor, quaint and sly, dimples the cheek and points the beaming eye. The lady has got beautiful dimpled cheeks and radiant eyes. And what adds beauty to her face is humor. What kind of humor? Quaint and sly. Quaint means attractively unusual. and sly means clever. So, unusual, clever humor adds dimples to the cheek of the comic muse and gives her the radiance of the eyes. We'll continue. Where gay invention seems to boast its wiles in amorous hint and half triumphant smiles. Here, gay invention is most probably a reference to the love intrigues that were part of the witty comedy of manners. You're familiar with the idea that comedy of manners was full of love intrigues, romantic themes. So, the gay invention seems to boast its wiles. Wiles refer to the stratagem, the strategies used to manipulate or persuade someone. So, gay invention seems to boast its wiles in amorous hint and half triumphant smiles. The love intrigue, the strategies of that are part of the love intrigue, they appear on the countenance of the muse as amorous hint and half triumphant smiles. They appear as romantic suggestions on her face and occasionally as half triumphant smiles. This means that the muse is a young lady, a young flirtatious lady, not a mature person. While her light masks or covers satire strokes, all hide the conscious blush her wit provokes. Another important feature of the comedy of manners is the masked satire. Bitter strokes of satire are often masked in wit and humor. And here, that is why it is said, while her light, the light of the comic muse, masks or covers satire strokes. Indirect satire is used in the genre. All hide the conscious blush her wit provokes. This lady's wit, the wit of the comic muse, it provokes blushes. People blush when they hear certain witty remarks and they hide their conscious blush. Look on her well. Does she seem formed to teach? Look at her, all of you. Does she look as if she is meant to teach? Should you expect to hear this lady preach? Do you expect this young, flirtatious, lively young woman full of love intrigues to preach? Is grey experience suited to her youth? Grey experience refers to the maturity of old age. Is that suited to her youth? Do solemn sentiments become that mouth? Do grave, serious sentiments suit her mouth? Become means suit that mouth. Bid her be grave, those lips should rebel prove to every theme that slanders mirth or love. Bid her, ask her to be grave, ask her to be serious. And what will happen? Her lips should rebel prove, her lips will prove rebel to every theme that slanders mirth or love. To every theme that is too serious, something that is against mirth and love. So she is fit to present themes of mirth and love. She is a lively young muse. She cannot present solemn sentiments. If you ask her to present serious solemn sentiments, she'll immediately become a rebel, and her lips are always rebel to themes other than mirth and love. We'll continue. Yet thus adorned with every graceful art to charm the fancy and yet reach the heart, must we displace her? So the counsel is going on describing the comic muse. She is adorned with every graceful art. That means she has got all the qualities to charm the fancy and yet reach the heart. The qualities are such that she will charm the fancy and yet reach the heart, touch the hearts too. Must we displace her? Must we remove her from here? The witty comic genre. Should we remove it from here? And instead advance the goddess of the woeful countenance, the sentimental muse. And should we bring, instead of the witty comedy of manners, the artificial, woeful, sentimental comedy? And instead advance the goddess of the woeful countenance. Sentimental comedy is here represented as the goddess of the woeful countenance. Woeful countenance means sad face. The sentimental muse. Her emblems view the pilgrim's progress and a sprig of rue. So the sentimental comedy reminds us of the themes similar to those of the pilgrim's progress, Puritan themes. And the sprig of rue. Rue is a bitter plant. A sprig of rue means a shoot, a twig of rue with a few leaves on it. So, the sentimental comic muse is so bitter. She reminds us of Puritan themes and the sprig of rue. View her, too chaste to look like flesh and blood. Look at her. She is too chaste, too perfect, too ideal to look real and human. Too chaste to look like flesh and blood. Primly portrayed on emblematic wood. Perfectly portrayed on emblematic wood. So it is so perfect and ornamental that the sentimental comedy doesn't look or sound real. It reminds us of serious themes similar to those presented in The Pilgrim's Progress by John Bunyan. Pilgrim's Progress is a prose work by John Bunyan. It's a Puritan work. So the themes of the sentimental comedy often remind us of the Puritan themes, and it is very artificial, too perfect to be real. Thus fixed in usurpation should she stand, she'll snatch the dagger from her sister's hand, and having made her votaries weep a flood, good heaven, she will end her comedies in blood. So the sentimental muse, if she is allowed to usurp the stage, if she stands there in usurpation, what will she do? She will snatch the dagger from her sister's hand. She will snatch the dagger from the sister tragedy. Apart from the comic muse, there is another muse on another end of the stage, that is the tragic muse. She will snatch the dagger from the tragic muse and make her votaries weep a flood. That means she will make the audience cry and cry, weep a flood. Good heaven, she'll end her comedies in blood. She will turn comedies into tragedies, end them in blood. Bid Harry Woodward break poor Dunstall's crown, imprison quick, and knock Ned Shutter down, while sad Bersanti, weeping over the scene, shall stab herself or poison Mrs. Green. All these are names of famous actors of the time. It means that the sentimental comedy will soon make all the characters die themselves or kill each other. She'll cause all sorts of misfortune to all the characters, and she'll turn comedies into tragedies. Such dire encroachments to prevent in time demands the critic's voice, the poet's rhyme. In order to prevent the sentimental muse from mixing the elements of tragedy into comedy, the critics should raise their voice. In order to prevent such encroachments, that means the intrusions upon the territory of tragedy. If the sentimental muse is not supposed to encroach upon the territory of tragedy, then the critics should raise their voice. And it also needs the poet's rhyme. New poets or writers should write proper comedies in order to prevent it from getting mixed with tragedy. Can our light scenes add strength to holy laws? That is the next question. Can the light scenes of the comedy add strength to holy laws? That is, can they preach? Can they teach law? Can they teach the dogma of religion? Can they preach morality? The answer is such puny patronage but hurts the cause. Comedy is not a genre that is supposed to preach anything. It is not supposed to preach religion. It is not supposed to preach morality. And in case a comedy attempts to preach something, that will defeat its own purpose. Can our light scenes add strength to holy laws? Such puny patronage but hurts the cause. It defeats the purpose of comedy. Fair virtue scorns our feeble aid to ask, and moral truth disdains the trickster's mask. So here virtue and morality are both personified. Virtue never asks the help of comedy in order to present itself. Virtue is to be taught through tragedies. Similarly, morality. Moral truth disdains the trickster's mask. Comedy is a tricky genre. It is a genre full of mirth and fun. So, morality or moral truth is not to be taught using the comic genre. That is what it means when we say moral truth disdains the trickster's mask. For here, their favorite stands. Their favorite is the tragedy. Now, the council points to the figure of tragedy at the other end of the stage. Here, their favorite stands. The favorite is the figure of tragedy, whose brow, severe and sad, claims youth's respect and pity's tear. So, being very severe and sad, tragedy claims the respect of youth. It derives pity from the audience. But if someone tries to mix tragic elements into comedy, that will only be hilarious. That will not get respect from the audience. So, according to the council, moral truth, virtue, etc., should be presented only through serious plays called the tragedies. If tragic elements are mixed into comedy, or if someone tries to preach through comedies, the effect will be hilarious. It will not be successful. Who, when oppressed by force her worth creates, can point a poignard at the guilt she hates. So, this tragedy, she is supposed to point dagger at guilt, and she is the one who is to preach virtue. Comedy is not supposed to preach virtue. That is the point put forth here.